Good evening and welcome to another community forum. I'm your host Byron Campbell, and my co-host here is of course Chris Diali. Chris, good evening. Another week,
Yes.
another day, another dollar, that's what we say.
Yeah, another lot of things going on in the world.
Well, yes.
Good evening, viewers. Welcome, and we're happy to be here again to chat and deal with some important issues.
Yeah. Of course, I want to tell you that we have a very special program for you here tonight. As usual, our guest is Royston Cumberbatch. He's the General Manager of the Green Development Bank. We're here to deal about, we're talking about many developmental issues, rural development, and we'll, so stay with us. Of course, understand that community forums come to you with the compliments of Green Development Bank and Allied Laboratories. So please stay with us. We'll be right back.
Community Forum comes to you in association with the Grenada Development Bank.
The choice to finance your education is clear. Try the Grenada Development Bank Won't You Dare. Our special student loan was designed with care for your growth, development, and welfare. This is how champions are made. Take on that challenge. Don't ever be afraid. Our special student loan will come to your aid with 100% of your study costs being paid. Vulnerability is but a temporary condition, and conquering it is strictly ambition. You can secure victory despite your position with a loan for accommodation, books, and tuition. We see your potential. We notice your drive. So on your marks, get set. Let your dreams come alive. Don't let hurdles of doubt get in your way, because you are the future. Contact GDB today. Our special student loan is just one application away. Grenada Development Bank. Development through financing.
Welcome back, viewers. Community Forum. Chris, another week. What's in the news? Property tax. I heard that the government in a release said that there are new valuations. However, there will be no, for the immediate, there will be no additional taxes on the new valuation. But new evaluations, were you aware that these evaluations were taking place?
Well, I heard the same excerpt from the news as you. I wasn't aware. I don't know if they did it, had teams go wrong, or if they used the historical data and use a factor to increase the valuation based on current market situation and conditions. I hear they talk about that there will be no increased taxes, and I wonder, I heard one of the technocrats saying that I mean, property taxes is based on the value of your property, and they use a rate, 0.5%, whatever percentage they use. And it will be interesting to see if they apply these new valuations, if they intend to drop the rate to keep your property tax at the same amount or no. Remember Trinidad tried that a few years ago.
So are they going to use the revised rates?
Right.
The revised
values. How are you going to use the revised values? Because it is for a tax purpose, primarily when government does that, you know, other things. So it'll be interesting. I know when Trinidad tried that a few years ago, they got very stiff pushback.
Yeah.
And they did evaluations and they kept the rate at the same rate, so the property tax went up significantly. So let us see what government is planning to do with this, and I suspect we'll hear about it in the budget, because the budget is to be read in the next few months. And obviously, the fiscal aspect of revenues and taxes is going to come up, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. So let's see. I mean,
let's see what happens. In the news last week, you had a press conference by the NNP. They address issues of the housing situation, the gift houses, that is from the Chinese. They talk about that. They talked about also, well, that is Dr. Mitchell talked also about the one of the criminal cases in the courts. What's your take on that press conference?
Well, I was very disappointed to hear Dr. Mitchell talk about the RGPF and how he berated the RGPF. Even in the same criminal matter, I think our police force does an outstanding job to solve crime.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not perfect, so they have traffic issues where they'll get criticisms on traffic and so on. But when it comes to hard crime and murders and those kind of things and chopping and those kind of things, I think the RGPF does excellent work. And we have to compliment them because they also have constraints in what tools they use and what they do. They're not as sophisticated as police forces in the first world. So I just thought that was a disappointing aspect. Regarding the housing, as I said to you last time when we spoke about it, I am in full support because I think Grenadians are their own worst enemy when it comes to things. You know, when Housing Authority would have had housing schemes before and you sign on a dotted line at least to own.
We're in full support of how it, my issue had to do with how it was announced. It was, I found it was, because I don't want to go over it, but here's the thing. But maybe I should allow you to finish. Well, what are your support here?
My support is that Housing Authority have, and I say we are our own worst enemy, because if we didn't be as bad pay as we were, this probably wouldn't have happened. So what they're saying is, come with your $55,000, go to the credit union or go to a bank. They have asked the financial institutions to keep the interest rate as low as possible, between 3 and 4%. And the average payback of $55,000 home that you're getting that is worth $100 or plus thousand is $200 and something. Some of us drink that in our weekend beers.
Yeah, but the majority of the applicants that have applied have been successful. First of all, when they applied, they weren't aware of the conditions, yes? But I think it's how it was announced. Come with your money or come with a mortgage. In other words, should it not have been on an individual basis to determine the ability? And you have 3 months. I think it's not what you do, Chris, very often. It's how you do it. I'm not suggesting that it's entirely free, because there are some costs for the local government, although there's a gift. But I think how you manage it and how you market and sell this would be important. But Chris, we'll move on.
Yes, please, let's go.
We'll move on. Chris, what's been dominating the news, international, regional, local, and otherwise, is the present Israeli-Palestinian conflict, or at least the Middle East conflict. I get sometimes emotional on this matter, because when you look at the media, there's two sides, and you're not getting two sides. You've been bombarded with one angle of the conflict. This is not to say that I uphold the kidnapping of children or the brutality and killing of innocent people, on no sides, yes? But I think the context is important, Chris. In other words, what is the reality in the Middle East and of the Palestinians living there? And I want to say that Amnesty International, this is a recognized international organization, are very clear in indicating and describing the system of apartheid that exists there. In fact, at the UN right now, Chris, as much as 18 countries agree that there's apartheid existing, even South Africa agrees now, and they know what apartheid is, that it is being practiced in the Gaza. Gaza is 141 square miles. Grenada is 133 square miles. We have 110,000 people. They have 2.3 million people in that area. It's the conditions there, Chris. Part of the conditions that the unemployment there is over 47%. With young people, it's 60%. In Israel, it's 4%, which are their neighbors. The system there is what is wrong. The UN Secretary General described the conditions there for children as hell on earth. There's a blockade that exists in Gaza by air, land, and sea, and that by Israel, which imposes this, and this, the results of this is widespread poverty. Under the system of apartheid, Israel atrocities, the authorities control virtually every aspect of Palestinian lives. They're subject to deadly oppression and discrimination on a daily basis. In other words, they've stepped up collective punishment. In other words, if you do something, the whole family suffered. Punitive home demolition. In other words, they just come in and demolish the house where, if it's your parents' house and they don't care whether, they carry out mass arrests. They have administrative detention of over 860 Palestinians, Chris. They have over 6,000 in jails. And I'm talking about children and women. This is the kind of condition that the Gaza and Palestinians, these are the conditions, the context that give rise to the reaction of the Palestinians in the Middle East. But what is the response? So given the situation, the carpet bombing that we're seeing now, you can't be targeting Hamas because you're blowing out entire neighborhoods. You can't select fighters in there. You have a siege on the city. There's no food, there's no water, there's no medicine, there's no electricity, there's nothing. So, and the reaction of some of the major Western countries, Chris, has been to, let's deliver bombs to Israel. Give them more bombs so they can do more bombing. I'm saying that, for me, that is not a solution. I think that peace will come when there's recognition. The United Nations, in fact, is very clear on the United Nations resolution. The state of Palestine has been recognized by over 139 states out of 193 member states. But what we're going to see, if 1,200 Israelis are killed, multiply that by 10. And that will tell you the amount of Palestinians that's going to be killed. Usually is times 10 when you work it out or more. So for me, even, and that's important, even US Senator Bernie Sanders have come out and indicated that this is a violation of international law, the siege that is taking place and the collective punishment for the whole community. So Chris, I think it's important that the other aspect of it, Chris, of course, is that we tend to believe that these things are happening outside of us and it's not going to affect us. But you know otherwise.
Well, I mean, this Palestinian-Israeli conflict has been going on for generations, unfortunately. And depending on which side of the fence you are, supporting Israel or not, it's also a religious thing as well.
Mm-hmm.
So when you get religion involved in these things, there's very little suasion to convince you otherwise. It's unfortunate what has happened in terms of Hamas and what they have done and the killing that is happening to innocent people on either side. Of course, the response from Israel, we all knew would have been, rather significant and holistic in how they approach it, as we see. And I don't think, even though they conduct genocide or they conduct whatever they're doing inside it and killing innocents along with possible militants, that the world is going to take them to the international court, a criminal court, and that is Israel supported by the US, supported by the Europeans and so on. So probably there's a different understanding for them and what happens. It's unfortunate in the sense that it's the innocents that always suffer. Yeah. And what I would say, Byron, for me, is that the tension in the world now has increased tenfold. Yeah. You had a situation with Russia and Ukraine still going on.
Is it? I don't hear anything about it anymore, Chris. It probably ended.
So that war is raging. Yeah. A lot of lives are being lost there as well. Yeah. And then you have this now Israeli-Palestinian conflict that is going on. And we don't know if the wider Middle East will be pulled into this.
Lebanon.
You have Lebanon, possibly. You have Iran, you have
Egypt,
a whole set of them around there. So we have to be careful. And for us in these parts of the world where we think the war is far from us, what is going to hit us is increased prices for oil. Oil is going to start to increase already because of futures market.
That's correct.
Right?
That's correct.
And once people feel there's threats, the price goes up as well as food. Food prices will go up. Once energy starts going up, food prices go up. So we far removed from the actual war, but we may see the effects of it through increased prices. And we're heading into Christmas now, so things could get erratic. So it's just one of those things that has put the world in greater tension.
Chris, I stand on the side of the Palestinians. Absolutely. I think what we want there is justice. We want the apartheid system to end. I was just hearing an 8-year-old young boy was talking up to the Israeli soldiers, and 8 years old, and saying, leave our lands. The question is, you're not going to destroy, you might destroy Hamas, but you're not going to destroy the Palestinian resistance. So I think that the response with bombs and carpet bombing and annihilating whole communities I mean, Gaza has been recognized as one of the poorest countries in the world, you know. Anyway, we'll move on to our local
Yes.
business. Chris, the other thing is that last week we had the loss of 2 innocent lives, infants. You know, I think this was very unfortunate. I want to express condolences to the families. This is very, very sad. I think our drivers, we have to exercise more care. I understand one of the accidents, the person didn't have appropriate license to drive a bus.
Yeah.
I think this is very unfortunate. But anyway, we move on. So, viewers, please stay with us. We are coming here with Royston Cumberbatch, General Manager of the Greener Development Bank, to talk development. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
The choice to finance your education is clear. Try the Grenada Development Bank Won't You Dare. Our special student loan was designed with care for your growth, development, and welfare. This is how champions are made. Take on that challenge. Don't ever be afraid. Our special student loan will come to your aid with 100% of your study costs being paid. Vulnerability is but a temporary condition, and conquering it is strictly ambition. You can secure victory despite your position with a loan for accommodation, books, and tuition. We see your potential. We notice your drive. So on your marks, get set. Let your dreams come alive. Don't let hurdles of doubt get in your way, because you are the future. Contact GDB today. Our special student loan is just one application away. Grenada Development Bank. Development through financing.
Concerned about your general health and wellness?
Do you need to know your complete blood count, lipid profile, or HbA1c?
Maybe you're an athlete or work in an environment that requires regular drug screening.
Interested in STI screening? What about renal, liver, or thyroid tests?
All these tests, plus hundreds more, are available at Allied Laboratories.
At Allied Laboratories, we are committed to providing the best service with accurate results. We now have 3 fully equipped locations to better serve you. You can contact our Grand Anse branch at 403-3488. You can contact our Grenville branch at 410-3488. Or you can contact our newest addition, the Guelph branch, at 404-3488. Or send us an email.
We're taking care of Grenada.
Good evening, viewers, and welcome back. As we indicated, our guest this evening is Mr. Royston Cumberbatch. He is the current General Manager of the Grenada Development Bank. Royston brings a lot of financial expertise. He's a ACCA, FCCA qualified. He has his MBA. He worked in in England when he was an England manager at Avivia Lloyds Banking Group and HSBC Bank in London. And he is a founder and principal consultant at Fintel Inc., Executive Director and Treasurer of Audit and Teen Challenge Grenada, and member of the Board of Directors of the Housing Authority of Grenada. Right, we should ask you some questions about that. Huh? Vice President, Investment Promotion Agency at GIDC, and has over 25 years of finance and business experience. So, Royston, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
We're happy to have you. We want to talk GDP this evening, and I want to probably start the batting if Byron don't mind.
Go ahead.
I could start the batting.
Start the batting.
Yeah, so, you know, first thing I want to say is to compliment yourself and your staff and probably your previous directors and boards for transforming GDB to what it is today. You know, many years ago, GDB was a bank, a developmental bank with not much capital to help out in developmental areas, and that has been turned around, and I'm happy to see where they are now. I was looking at your balance sheet today, and you have a very strong balance sheet, hundreds of millions in assets and so on. And of course, you have a lot of cash in the bank too. Something that is a
At the
good
time,
thing.
at the time.
That's last year.
So, and I know GDB has been one of the institutions that the government have targeted for a lot of developmental aspect and work in Grenada. So probably could give us a quick snapshot of what the bank is now currently engaging in and the sectors that they're probably attacking.
All right, good. So thank you very much. Actually, it's very much a privilege to be here. I think that when MTV approached me to sort of sponsor this program, I goes, yes, because actually at my previous job at GIDC, I also sponsored a program,
Right.
Business in 3.
Yeah.
So I thought, yeah, why not? Let's get us off, right? So I think in terms of the government, in terms of GDB, first of all, we have that GDB is a government bank. So whatever GDB does should be aligned with the government priorities. And for persons who don't know, the government has a number of priority sectors, which include obviously tourism, agribusiness, manufacturing, health and wellness, education. We have something called, well, obviously technology, ICT, which also includes BPOs, call centers, etc. And we have alternative energy. And obviously the creative sector has been pulled out more recently. But now this new government has some kind of areas that they want to focus in a bit more, which includes obviously low-income housing, what they call vocational training. So education is still high on there. I think the whole agribusiness, productive sector is also high. So although those priority sectors have been there for a while, as a matter of fact, I'm also a member of a technical working group that's actually relooking those priority sectors, try to determine which ones we should really be focused on. So the GDB lends into all of those priority sectors, and predominantly, as you said, the GDB was actually called the Agricultural Bank of Grenada. So traditionally, GDB used to lend into a lot of like agricultural loans, etc. But I think more recently, they've been lending into a lot of mortgages. So 50% are actually 50% of the bank book of all loans advances is actually mortgages. But currently, we have a strategy whereby we're not going after mortgages aggressively because we think development is bigger than mortgages. So whilst we're still doing mortgages, I think we want to focus on the more low-income housing, and we want to try to get more education and maybe even the creative sector, which is kind of been pushed by the government. Those areas I think should be financed more, right? So person who's out there is listening and they're thinking, right, creative sector has obviously been banned around. Well, where can I get a loan to have a studio? Maybe something like what we have here.
Yeah.
I think that's where we should be pointed.
So I looking at your statement, financial statement for 2022-2021, and advances, which is loans given to various sectors.
Correct.
Agriculture was at 2.85 and it's now at 3.27. So you lent in 2021 2.5 million and you brought that up to 3 million, 500,000. When we say that is not significant. Education was 10.4, you're at 10.8, very small increase. Housing was 48.2 and you're now at 54.4 in 2022. I'm quite certain you're above that now. So when we look at this, tourism was 7 and now 600,000. And then you had, I think, other business of almost 19 million and 17 million. But when you look at this profile, the obvious question is, Byron and I have had programs prior talking about agriculture and investment in agriculture. And we talk it, but we don't do it. So the issue and the question for me to you is, why is the GDB having agriculture moving by such low percentages from year on year, from 2.5 to 3 million? That's $500,000. What is the constraints the bank are seeing in not lending more to develop agriculture?
Yeah, I think when you think about the bank and lending, of course, the bank doesn't just lend to people, right? Like just say, pick you up the street and say, hey, come for a loan. Persons have to come to the bank generally. Of course, the bank can promote, and the bank can say, hey, we are here to lend to all these different sectors, but it has to be applicants coming forward with viable projects. And if you understand the landscape now, the youths of today, they're not really interested in agriculture. That's just one aspect. Another aspect is that when we think agriculture, we really should think agri-tech. We should think agri-tech, or ag-tech as it's called. Because traditional farming, no, it's kind of harsh.
Or agribusiness.
Or think agribusiness.
Yes.
When we think traditional agriculture, it's not attractive, let's just say, right?
Yeah.
I mean, even me, as I said in my profile, I'm a director of an NGO, Adult and Teen Challenge Grenada, and we actually are farming some lands by Bushaju Bridge. Nichols land, but he leased to us. We found about 6 acres of land, and I'm the treasurer on the board, and I'm looking at the financials, and I'm thinking, we're not doing great.
No?
We're not doing great, you know. Of course, because if you don't have proper weed control, drip irrigation, you know, technology then in the farming, then the farm wouldn't make money. And then persons may, you know, traditionally they realize, no, this is hard. It's hard to make money in farming. But I think farming is a very lucrative area. I mean, I actually single-handedly farmed 3 acres of land myself before I went off to England. And I know it's an area that can make a lot of money. But however, it has to be done with technology. It has to be done smart. What happens in agriculture, everybody tries to plant the same thing at the same time, rather than people thinking, what else can we grow? In my small plot of land where I am, I grow pomegranate, you know, and other things that you don't even see in Grenada. A lot of spinach, you know what I mean? And these are the things that people want, but people are not growing these things. So I think if you're going to do farming, agriculture has to increase. There has to be more viable projects
coming to the bank.
And one more thing I want to say on this, right? Traditionally, agribusiness like fisheries and agriculture, etc., those businesses, they tend not to be well managed for some reason or the other.
But we see if you're a development bank, so your guess commercial bank, profit is a incentive, is one of your objective. You want to be profitable, you want to be successful. But a development bank requires other inputs if it's going to focus on development and is not operating as a regular commercial bank. In this case, for you to successful, if you're going to serve, let's say, the agricultural sector, I mean, your policy must direct this in the same vein where you have adverts on promoting student loans. You will have, in other words, the point I want to make here is that your technical services would be a very important, a critical success factor. Because particularly if you're financing small business, you will need technical services to help with the feasibility and the ongoing support services, the advice, development, because the persons you're going to be financing is not going to have all the requirements to manage, whether it's in the. So my question to you, what technical services does a bank provide for small, medium business across your sectors?
I think you hit a point that's really close to my heart. First of all, for viewers, I only joined the bank on September 1st.
Right.
All right? And I've gone in there and I'm like, are we lending loans to people who don't even know how to run a business? This is crazy.
Yeah.
You know? I'm hearing that GDB should be working more in conjunction with GIDC. I came from GIDC, but GIDC is not helping the small man like that. I mean, they have courses, but they're not teaching the small man how to run a business or how to manage finance, etc. People are getting loans and putting loans in a personal bank account and running it like if it's a mom and pop shop.
Yeah.
So I think to answer your question directly, what needs to happen is that the GDB needs to work more in conjunction with the GIDC, the Ministry of Agriculture, even the Ministry of Education.
Yeah.
You know, persons need to be trained and sort of acquire some of the technical skills around running a business. Most of these small business owners are people who maybe think, I'm not making enough money, for example. I'm going to just get a loan and do a business. And yes, the GDB will help them obviously with packaging that and coming with a business plan and all that kind of stuff. But the GDB is only one arm of the government, you know what I mean? Or maybe one finger of the government, maybe the big finger. But actually, you know, we need all the other fingers, we need all the other hands to come and grab that person, hug that person, and let that person develop and grow, right? I mean, typically, if you think of a baby, not only the mom grows with the baby, the whole family, everybody has a hand in growing the child. Yeah. And so I see it with a small business.
Right. So Royston, whereas, I mean, I agree with you, as you indicated, you're recently there. Of course, you'll be working on the vision and the strategic plan going forward. But clearly, when you look at it, as Chris, you pointed out, that where 57% of your loans went to the housing sector and the agricultural fishing sector 4%, you know, 4.18%, very, very small. In other words, and so my question is, from a rural development point of view, what is present and where you want to go with this? Where are the resources of the bank being directed? If we're going to compare like the South, or let's say the parish of St. George, compared to the rest of the country, the rural development, does the bank have a vision for targeting specifically rural development and therefore probably setting aside a certain percentage of its resources for rural development? Because you see, and I'm making this point, you're not just a bank, you are a development bank.
Correct.
And that is the distinction. That's the difference between you and everybody else.
I like it. So I think first of all, the bank needs a new strategy.
Yeah.
So the old strategy, I think, expired around 2022.
Okay.
Obviously, the manager changed around that time.
That's correct,
Marvin Lord is now with the Riser.
Yeah.
So I came in, and one of my mandate is to lead, obviously, the bank's second transformation, as it's called, but also to lead the strategic planning, which we've started.
Okay.
I mean, a lot of work has happened already, just to be clear. Consultations have happened, etc. But some of the questions you're asking is basically things that we need to look at in the eye and say, look, we're not just here to develop the South. We're here to develop the North. So how are we going to approach this, right? And I think it's a matter of actually going out there and meeting people on the farms, meeting people where they are, right? You know, actually almost like going door to door, you know, village to village, and saying, look, you know, we're a development bank. You know, we are here to sponsor projects, and we see the need for these projects. Are you interested? Then maybe train you first.
Yeah.
You know, I think GIDC has an approach with a grant program where they have something called, you know, the train people first, a first push.
Yeah, in other words, it was like this, where I was involved in that, Chris,
Good.
where you had mandatory 5 weeks of training, entrepreneurial skills training, whether it's bookkeeping, marketing. After that, you got a small grant. It's like a push to test your product.
First push, yeah.
First push. And then, based on an analysis of that, then you go on to get a full grant. So there's a stage process. But what I liked was the training was mandatory. We designed it that way specifically. So my thing is that if the bank is going to, and if the bank is going to go in that direction, the question is the resources to do this. Is it coming entirely from the government? How soft is this? Because if you're getting soft loans, it means that you can be
CDB.
be more reasonable.
Yes.
Let me use that word, than a regular commercial bank.
Correct.
You can in fact afford, and particularly if you get grants also, and that's the question I have. The bank as a development institution, it's a bank, but it's a development institution, and given the amount of resources that are available, climate funds that are available, would you be pursuing such monies, such grants to on land? Well, not on land, but to
Give it as grants.
give it as grants.
Or low, yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Manage those kind of
And
resources.
the answer is actually yes. Such grants are actually available.
Yeah.
And we have something called the EDA program right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
And it's for persons who have vulnerable homes
Yeah.
out there in the communities.
Yeah.
Maybe you are exposed to hurricanes. You're exposed to natural disasters. You know, the bank actually has a program. It's a 2% interest rate where you can, get all your doors, windows, roof, change, even water tanks, even back walls. I was actually talking to an officer today, project officer, and she was actually showing me some projects that she had sent down, but hasn't hit my desk yet, where people have, back wall problems, they're almost passing on a ridge, So these programs already exist. I think the challenge is that persons in the community needs to know that those programs exist. And the thing about it is that persons in the community don't always, maybe even see these or know these things, so the bank has to get out there. So how are we going to tackle it? I mean, we just actually had a new communications officer. She's a very well-known person in the media. So hopefully with her experience, we can come up with some programs. We can get out to the rural areas and let people know what's available for them.
Because one of the limitations that we have in Grenada is that we don't have accreditation to some of these climate finances.
That's correct. That's correct.
Does the bank see itself as taking on such a role, taking on such a responsibility? Because with that level of grant financing, it is possible that you can have a separate division because there's always administrative support to cover those kind of. So you see yourself with a dual portfolio operation.
Yes.
Not a commercial aspect, but also a quote-unquote, Chris, a more development, grant financing
Well, no, I mean,
aspect.
the bank has been very commercial. When you look at their advances to housing, I mean, and mortgages, I'm quite certain it is what is 54 million. I mean,
Because you're making money there.
yeah.
Too commercial.
Too commercial,
Yeah,
yes.
so, I mean, that part of the developmental part in housing, I know, and you see what's going on now with the housing that was just given to or selected people from the Chinese. I suppose they're coming to you for the mortgages.
They are coming to me, and remember, I'm also director of housing.
Yeah.
Right,
so
there's
they
a
are
natural.
So they are coming to us, but there's other lenders out there.
Yeah.
But I think that they want 3% interest
Yes.
rate. Now, the key thing with actually lending is that what rate are you borrowing the funds at, or what rate are you getting the funds at in the first case. And
So
if
you get soft funds from CDB and so on.
well, how soft?
I mean, I
1%?
1%.
Okay, even if you have 1%,
The administrative costs.
administrative cost is 3%. So you have to add a spread.
Yes.
So then you get to the 4%. But CDB is not giving 1%
At
loans.
1%.
I mean, they're giving 3% loans. So then if we had 3% spread to cover administrative costs,
Yes.
that is 6%. Then it started to get expensive. So maybe where we need to be looking at is the government.
Yes,
Yes.
but government has traditionally put in millions in the bank, and they don't charge you interest. They give you for programs to develop programs.
Correct.
So that comes as grant funding. I mean, the good thing of your statement, and I'm complimenting the bank, when you look at your non-productive loans and possible provision for loan loss, you're just at 1.4 million. It's very low
NPL.
compared to commercial banks and credit unions and so on. So that is excellent work, I mean, from what you do there. But I still believe in Byron's question, just to follow it up, strategically, I know you say you're doing the strategic plans now and so on, but do you see the bank, and I understand the risk, you know, I keep coming back to agriculture because it's close to me, it's dear to me in the sense that we talk a lot of it, but we don't do it. And I hear you talking about bankable projects have to come to you for you to support it. And the risk involved in agriculture, because it's weather, is this, labor shortages, is a complex thing. But I think I would like to see the bank, and I don't know if that could be a part of the strategic approach, get involved with not necessarily you doing it yourself, but bring people on board to train, as Byron say, or work with small, medium businesses that enter agro processing, different agriculture, and bring the science. So
It's much needed.
So in other words, if you're doing a project in agriculture, will you finance greenhouses for the farmer? Teach them how to operate a greenhouse so they reduce their risk in terms of to the weather. You get better production planning because you could phase your crops in a controlled environment. Is the bank looking at these different ideas to try and attract people in these sectors that is so vital for the country?
Chris, can I ask you, Royston, to hold the answer when you come back? Because I have to go to a break now. Viewers, please stay with us. Be right back. Short break.
The choice to finance your education is clear. Try the Grenada Development Bank Won't You Dare. Our special student loan was designed with care for your growth, development, and welfare. This is how champions are made. Take on that challenge. Don't ever be afraid. Our special student loan will come to your aid with 100% of your study costs being paid. Vulnerability is but a temporary condition, and conquering it is strictly ambition. You can secure victory despite your position with a loan for accommodation, books, and tuition. We see your potential. We notice your drive. So on your marks, get set. Let your dreams come alive. Don't let hurdles of doubt get in your way, because you are the future. Contact GDB today. Our special student loan is just one application away. Grenada Development Bank. Development through financing.
Concerned about your general health and wellness?
Do you need to know your complete blood count, lipid profile, or HbA1c?
Maybe you're an athlete or work in an environment that requires regular drug screening.
Interested in STI screening? What about renal, liver, or thyroid tests?
All these tests, plus hundreds more, are available at Allied Laboratories.
At Allied Laboratories, we are committed to providing the best service with accurate results. We now have 3 fully equipped locations to better serve you. You can contact our Grand Anse branch at 403-3488. You can contact our Grenville branch at 410-3488. Or you can contact our newest addition, the Guelph branch, at 404-3488. Or send us an email.
We're taking care of Grenada.
Welcome back, viewers. We're here with our special guest, Royston Cumberbatch, General Manager, Grenada Development Bank. Chris, before the break, you were posing a question.
Yeah, and I was asking Dr. Cumberbatch to kind of give us an understanding of how GDB could partner to help people in agriculture. That, you know, if you're a man in agriculture or a woman in agriculture, you're so concerned with production and making sure things grow and bear and so on. You don't have time for the other side of the business.
Correct.
The marketing, the keeping of the books, and so on. And the question is, you know, I have floated in my head that we need to get a cadre of people who have expertise in finance, in marketing, whatever the case is, and offer them to these businesses at a price, but not a stymified price or something that will kill them, to develop aspects of the business so that they could grow. Because as you may know, rural businesses and business in the rural sector is one of the greatest employers and deals with unemployment situation. And I agree with you, we can, at this stage in our life, go with fork, spade, and hoe to agriculture, to the farm. So is there part of the strat plan of GDB that will look to address that in a holistic way, even though they have to partner with other places?
Right. So I think my answer to this would be, like, in the first instance, the GDB and the GIDC needs to work closer together. For those of you who don't know, the GIDC has something called a Business Development Center. That was actually formerly in the GDB, and it was taken out of the GDB and put in GIDC. But actually, in my mind, it's not focused a lot on helping the GDB clients. Maybe it's focused on helping other persons. So to answer your question directly, I think that small business owners, they need help. And they need help with, you're right, finance, marketing, even technical training. They need help with all these areas, right? And the thing about it is, who is best placed to do that? Is it the GDB? Potentially, yes, but in conjunction with the GIDC, the Ministry of Agriculture. Because you see, here's the thing. While we have, you know, technical experts, you know, can assess a loan and we also have persons, we actually have only one person right now in the business development support area, which to me needs beefing up. To me, we need a whole team. And I think it actually is a good revenue earner, even for the bank, to be able to offer what I call shared services. You know, if we have a small team that says, you know, we do marketing for small businesses at a fraction of the price of the outside, right? Or we can do bookkeeping. I mean, the question is, maybe it's not actually the GDB, it could be the GIDC, but the whole matter is here that what we need to do, and I think I've spoken to my chair about this, you know, the chair and the head of different institutions, organizations like the GDB, the GIDC, maybe other organizations need to sit down around a table like this and say, okay, look, it's not working. We're not supporting small businesses the way they should be supported. So how are we going to improve? I think that conversation needs to happen, but not in isolation. Not just like talking about GDB on its own. It's like, GDC, what are you doing? I mean, GIDC, what are you doing? You know, maybe there's others out there. Potentially, there could even be what they call PPPs, public-private partnerships, where, for example, we have NGOs, for example.
Yes.
You know, NGOs could be set up just to help development of our people. And those NGOs, of course, will raise donor funding, and then they could provide marketing, they could provide finance, bookkeeping, technical support for free. And I think the NGO that I'm a part of, which is called Adult and Teen Challenge, is actually one such NGO, where we actually get grant funding, and we actually train. I mean, they actually train people in beekeeping, in life skills. It's actually up in Good Hope, for those of you who don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
And we do a number of life skills and business skills training, but we're an NGO. So the question is, how can the government empower such an NGO?
Well, you made an important point earlier on that, you brought it to the fore that, look, understand that this is a government institution. The bank will be mandated to work in conjunction with government policies. Clearly, the government is emerging and say, look, our policy now is the creative sector. So you can see a focus there. Our policy is now on low-income housing financing, because the announcement from clearly that's where it's going to happen. But we're kind of sticking with agriculture because look, it's our passion,
It's big.
Chris. I was in the supermarket earlier this week, in the South, and we are now importing cabbages from Canada. These cabbages are
The purple ones, the white
not
ones?
the white ones, and they look puffy.
Plasticky.
Plasticky is the word. Albeit the local one is almost twice as expensive.
Yeah.
About 80% more expensive. But the point is, we are unable now to supply a basic commodity of cabbages to and many other commodities.
It's a problem.
So the question is, the government policy, clearly as I heard it, transformational policy, one of it is food security. That was announced by the throne speech as one of the priority areas, Chris. So the question is, how is this going to be transferred to development bank? Because we are not going to, and I agree with you, Chris, that the fork and spade is not going to do the trick for us, because in the climate crisis now, you require irrigation, you require technology and certain tools to do it. So in your strategic planning phase, which you talk about, are you going to take this into consideration? And further is that if you're going to take, strictly speaking, a commercial look at it, because the reason why our traditional banks, commercial banks, you're 4%, they are less than 4%, invest in agriculture is because of the risk.
Risk, yeah.
So if you take a strictly commercial approach to it, it's not going to happen. There must be some other dimensions that must come in.
Correct.
To grow the sector. I don't see how else is going to happen.
The impact.
Yeah.
The question for me in all of that is that what low-hanging fruits in the various sectors are they looking to? So you have housing, you spoke about ICT, you spoke about agriculture, you have tourism, you have lending in all those various areas. And
education, that's a
yes,
big
and
area you've done well in.
Yes,
actually.
correct. Yeah, traditionally, I'm actually a beneficiary of the bank.
right.
Excellent. Okay.
So,
Yeah.
the question is, our government talks about transformative ideas, transformative ways of doing things differently from what we are accustomed to. Does your strat plan cater for these transformative, or as we like to say, thinking outside of the box, but at the same time preserving your financial strength? Because the more you lend and the more you get back, is the more you can keep on lending, apart from getting grant funding from various organizations. So is part of the strat plan looking at that?
I would like to say that, first of all, I like to think sometimes like there's no box, right? Because once you think about a box, then you limit your thinking.
Yeah.
So if we think like there's no box, just open up our minds, what we have to understand is that we have tourism development happening. Like, if you look at the East Coast and Davis, etc., big hotels are coming. And at the GIDC, I spent days and weeks working on actually with a major hotel, one of the biggest in the island, trying to see how can they get enough food. And they were complaining that they can't get the right quantity and the right quality of food. A large portion of that is actually produced in Grenada. So to your point is that the bank needs to obviously give almost a grant funding to some extent, right? And the bank needs to actually say, well, okay, look, agriculture is really important for our nation, for our food security.
Yeah.
And I think with that, I think it's really important that that we look at how can we give some grants to some person? How can we really almost like even give them the equipments, not just even give them the grants, the actual money, because obviously in most cases the bank don't actually give you the money. The bank might give the money to the vendors, etc. Right?
That's correct.
So the question is, how can the bank set up? Maybe work with MNIB, for example. Maybe that's the answer. Work with MNIB. Do massive procurement of equipment. Maybe MNIB should really be the partner of the bank. Just say, okay, let's do a full understanding of the agricultural landscape in Grenada. Let's understand what will it take to do different, like cabbages. What would it take to do enough cabbages for the whole of the OECS? Not just Grenada. Do what is called like vertical farming, greenhouse farming. There's all kind of different things. What would it take? And then let's approach the government, talk to the government. I mean, I spoke to the Ministry of Finance recently, and he said to me, come with a funding paper. The government is willing to actually give service loans. The government is actually willing to give grants. But of course, we have to approach them.
I want to switch it a little. I had a conversation with the president of the poultry industry in Grenada, and they are also a very unhappy bunch. Because here we're talking about the amount of foreign exchange that we are chicken lovers in this country.
Big chicken lovers.
And eat a lot of chicken.
Yes.
And the question is, I know they had some farms that should have come up one time. I'm not sure the status if it's working or not. But the president seems to think that there's no support for poultry. And we talk, but there's no real support. And there are poultry farmers out there that wants to see Grenada become more self-sufficient in poultry, because when you put out local chicken, it goes faster than the imported ones because the taste is better, it's not frozen for so long. You might say we use the same chemicals to grow them, so from that standpoint, it's not much different. So is there room in the bank structure to take on projects in poultry, for example?
Yes.
And what can poultry farmers expect?
I'm glad you raised that, because that has been one of my proudest moments. I joined the bank, as I said, 1st of September. I spent at least, all of my weeks working on a big poultry project.
Yeah, okay.
And as a matter of fact, the bank had traditionally, they had some money from us. They're about to go start it. They're up in St. David's in the Felix Park. It's called Greener Chicken Farm. And the bank had to lend some money, and they wanted some more money. The bank said, hey, let's look at this. So the bank didn't, willingly lend. I came in, I analyzed it, I looked at the project. I spent time with the owner. I spent 3 Sundays with the owner. And I'm proud to say that we actually extended some further lending to the project. And the project is going to go live in January. And he's planning to produce around 500,000 birds a year, but traditionally he's going to start with around 400,000 birds.
So he's going to, because I know there's an economy of scale.
Would GDB consider putting a staff member as a director on that board?
Well, actually, good question. The guy came in with his wife this week, and we actually put a condition that a GDB representative had to be on his board. And he was like, whoa, we wasn't here on his wife. They're very emotional.
Yeah.
We weren't planning to have a board just yet. We wasn't like, hey guys, we have to be on this. As a matter of fact, we actually have an oversight committee as well, in conjunction with GIDC and Ministry of Agriculture. So we're taking this quite serious. But you're right, poultry, as a matter of fact, I actually attended a meeting in Grenville, I think last year, to the poultry policy. And I had lots of poultry farmers there. Poultry farmers are feeling unloved. There's a policy, but the policy doesn't exactly support them. And one of the questions they were asking is that, if they ramp up production in poultry, right, would the government say reserve 40% of the imports just for locals? I cut back on the imports by 40% and reserve it just for locals. But here's the thing, if they do that,
Catch-22.
We need the locals to produce the 40%, else the ordinary person be like, where's my chicken?
Yeah, and the cost as well. You have to manage the cost. Normally, locally produce a higher price
versus local versus import. Where is that, Chris?
Yeah, because the imports, because of the subsidies and the volumes and so on, the
prices are lower.
The prices are lower per pound.
We have a feed issue too.
So we have to do vertical farming. So this new farm that's actually coming is a fully integrated vertical farm. What does that mean? The guy is looking at, feed, he's looking at
chicks,
hatcheries, he's looking at solar, looking at, rainwater harvesting. So this guys are really
innovative.
I'm glad you say innovative. I was going to say smart, but one of my directors says, I don't care about smart. Will his chicken be cheaper than the imported chicken? And the answer is actually, in some instances, yes. Because of his technology.
But I also think the Grenadian public like fresh chicken.
Correct.
And even though it's priced 10 cents more or 40 cents more per pound, they will pay for it.
I agree.
You understand? Because it's the mindset is that it's tasting better and, you know, the preparation. So I believe there is room for that. Of course, is how we do it. So I'm happy to hear the bank has supported in that.
And to your point, there are other farms. I mean, we have excellent farm up in the north. One that I've also done some work on. That we actually, and I said we because I was a part of it, but then going to the board, I actually resigned from the board of that project to avoid any conflict of interest. And I think we are discussing with regional lenders. Yes. But you know, here's the thing, right? Farming is risky, as you said.
Yeah.
And commercial banks are looking at this and they goes, this is risky.
Yeah.
I don't understand it. This is really risky. And they're not lending. Or maybe they're lending, but they limit themselves. Because what actually happened, my understanding of excellent farms is that, you know, had a significant lender who lent 10 million. And he goes, that's all we can do. And he goes, all we need is 2 more million. He goes, we can't do any more. And then there's gaffing.
Yes.
And then there's regulatory, there's you know, controls.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, it's
again, you could argue the sizing of the project at the time probably wasn't appropriate, and well, we could go through that as a different
Start
conversation.
small, get big. Yeah.
I think the issue here is because GDB is developmental in nature, they must carve out sections of the society where we believe the developmental work is critical.
Agreed.
So, for example, in fisheries, I have always proffered the thought: why over the decades we only have place to come and sell your fish, and why we don't do a processing plant?
Well,
you know,
I want to talk to that. I mean, I was sitting at GIDC. We actually had a project brief called Canning of Fish.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is, do you know we actually export tuna?
I know that.
There's actually a project called GeneX and Go. They actually export tuna. But you know that we also import scraps of tuna in tins?
In tins, of course.
So we're exporting quality tuna.
And we import
in
the scraps.
Scraps in tins.
Sure.
And
we actually go to the supermarket and buying the scraps in tins.
And my point is, compare that to what we did in cocoa and processing, and we're now doing top-of-the-line chocolates.
Yes.
Right? Why we can't apply that to fisheries?
Yeah.
And have the Japanese who have given loads of help for us in fisheries, why don't we change and be transformative and say we want a plant?
I think some of it has to be mindset issues.
And you support.
And training. Yeah. I think some of it, just to be clear, some of this things we're talking about here, you have to look at the curriculum, the school curriculum.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing that we haven't touched on much is say the marine.
Yeah.
Mariners have grown so much, but there's no one to actually go and actually repair or even clean the boats.
The technical skills. NULO has started doing some of that. Royston, we run out of time,
That's
but
right.
I want
lots to talk about.
I want to ask you. I mean, clearly you indicated that the bank is now in the process of reviewing its mandate, new strategic plan. But what do you see as the key opportunities there for the bank, particularly in the context of taking in your competitors, if you can call it that? Credit unions are growing. They are taking a big part of the mortgage market now. What do you see as your niche? What do you see as your focus?
Understand.
In going forward?
So I'd change the question around to say what is my vision?
Yeah, right? And your vision, clearly.
So my vision, as one I shared with the chair,
and
I understand that it was bound wrong before, is to set what's called a diaspora growth fund.
Yeah.
So a diaspora growth fund, and my background is actually fund accounting, investment accounting.
Yeah.
So it's a fund that ordinary people, Grenadians who are abroad, you know, who wants to invest back home, can put in $1,000, $500 into a fund.
Sorry.
And that fund will maybe grow to a couple of millions. And maybe persons in the private sector like yourself can then sit down in front of small projects and select them and say, now we have a fund, we can actually give you the money at 1% interest rate.
Venture capital.
But not only that,
we
can also get mentors, persons who are successful in these areas, again, in the diaspora, to work with them, support them. maybe finance mentors, marketing mentors.
So there's
etc.
technical support from them.
Technical
Yeah,
support.
yeah.
So I think that's an area that definitely we could look at.
Yeah.
But I think the bank is also potentially looking at taking deposits, actually changing the banking act.
Okay.
Because that will actually improve liquidity.
Yes.
Because we're not currently taking deposits. I mean, and there's a number of other things that we're actually looking at, right? So we want to become more modern. Even though we're a development bank, it doesn't mean that we have to be stuck in what I call the Stone Age, right? I always sum up transformation into people, processes, and systems. And in the case of the bank, I think I add products. So I think what I'd like to see is just a change or transformation of the products, the people, the processes, and the systems of the bank.
But never losing sight of your developmental in nature.
Correct.
And the
Thank you for that.
fact that you originally came from being the Grenada Agricultural Bank. In fact, it was the PRG that changed this, People's Law Number 33, 1980, that changed it to what it is now, giving it a wider mandate.
Yes.
But still, I mean, you probably find that I labored in this, but I have so much concern about, as a small island, fertile soil, small population, our inability to feed ourselves.
I agree.
I'm so concerned about that. So I know that's not your first mandate, but the question is, what is your... I mean, I appreciate the fact that it is a small component, but an important component. And my wish would be, Chris, for that component, the
Become bigger.
agricultural LinkedIn, to grow.
Well,
you know?
I mean, remember the Throne speech spoke about developing MOU with St. Vincent to help with agriculture and what is going on in agriculture and so on.
Yes,
So,
yes.
I mean, to me, it's an indictment on what we are not doing here.
Because the agricultural sector, I don't feel, gentlemen, that it's getting
The support.
the importance or the respect or the... We just have to do, I mean, you don't have the single responsibility
No,
for
of
it.
course.
I'm not suggesting that. And I'm making a bigger issue, is that there's a lot of words, there's a lot of talk, but I'm not feeling the results. When I go in the community, whether it's the farm roads, the state of the farm roads, or the technical support, or because the numbers are showing a picture that our food import bill is going up.
Correct.
You look in the supermarket, I mean, just leave this, walk out the supermarket and make a glance back. All the shelves are imported food. This is not healthy, first of all. In fact, Chris, maybe it's a good time to say it. Speaking to a doctor this week, you know what he says? He says, look, our cancer rate is going up, whether it's breast cancer, it's colon cancer, prostate, various, in other words, and he believes that the reason is a nutrition one. Straight up. I mean, straight up. I mean, this is a doctor saying that, a medical person. So, and because the local nutritious food, the real healthy food is not available, we
eat far more processed foods
Yes.
than the real thing. Yeah.
I want to make not so much a promise, but there is something called the 2035 plan. I don't know if you've seen it.
Oh, yes.
But I think there's a lot of things in there.
Yes.
I mean, I didn't create it, but
Yes.
some
Yes.
bright person in
Yes.
the ministry
Yeah.
created it.
I was part of it. So.
But you're part of it, so good. That's very good. I think what I'm going to do is to make sure I reacquaint myself with it, because there's a lot of stuff in there on the productive sector.
Yeah.
And as we come up with a new strategy for the bank, to look and see how can the bank actually support or implement
Or harmonize with it.
or harmonize with it. Because I think in there's a lot of stuff in there about the productive sector, etc. And I agree.
Yeah.
We need to produce
But it's a
more.
really important institution. I mean, from reading from learning about you, Royston, clearly your qualification, but your skill sets that you have, that you bring to the institution, could make a difference in terms of your and what we've discussed here, and just in terms of your foresight. So I just want to wish this institution very well, Chris.
No, well, I mean, the institution has been doing well.
Well.
It's just now to keep supporting what they do and make sure that the new strat plan is going to facilitate that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any final comments before we close, Royston?
I think final comment will be, obviously, you're right. Is the GDP is the people's bank by the people for the people. So I think we need to continue helping ordinary people.
Absolutely.
What's this called? Financing,
Through development
development through financing. Thank you very much. Yeah,
Pleasure.
Great pleasure. Yeah.
Pleasure to have you.
Viewers,
Take
that's
care.
all the time we have. Next week we have a very interesting program. I want to say that we've been limited with time to facilitate call-ins, but next week we're going to open the lines. We have a special program next week. You'll learn more about it. That's October the 18th, the day before the national holiday, October 19th. So we'll see you next week, same time. Thank you for watching. Good evening. Bye.
Community Forum came to you in association with the Grenada Development Bank.
The choice to finance your education is clear. Try the Grenada Development Bank Won't You Dare. Our special student loan was designed with care for your growth, development, and welfare. This is how champions are made. Take on that challenge. Don't ever be afraid. Our special student loan will come to your aid with 100% of your study costs being paid. Vulnerability is but a temporary condition, and conquering it is strictly ambition. You can secure victory despite your position with a loan for accommodation, books, and tuition. We see your potential. We notice your drive. So on your marks, get set. Let your dreams come alive. Don't let hurdles of doubt get in your way, because you are the future. Contact GDB today. Our special student loan is just one application away. Grenada Development Bank.